Well, that's cool that, there's some kind of feedback.
Yes. We're getting there.
This has been such a weird experiment because there's been almost no feedback. The only thing that seems to be constant is like the marketing team and the executive team at MacFab just says, just keep going. That's the only thing that the only feedback we get. or at least the only feedback I've heard. Actually, no. Whenever I've messaged Misha or emailed with him, he's always been like, podcast is good, keep going. Okay.
Yeah.
Unless he wants to, nuke it and turn it into something else. It honestly would not surprise me if you did come and were like, yeah, we need a different co-host. Like, that would not surprise me in the littlest, What are you printing?
Oh, you can hear that?
Oh, yeah.
I am printing spacers for the Checkers engine.
Wow, okay. You put some faith in your prints?
I mean, these are for mock-up prototyping.
Oh, okay.
And they won't have any load on them. But
is there any rubberized 3D printing?
yes, DPU.
Okay. So you could make motor mounts with 3D
Yeah,
printing?
actually people have, and they're very successful.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, you got to get past the 3D printing sucks as a material nowadays.
No. I'm going to push back on that. You don't have to get past that. What you have to do is you have to find the materials that don't suck, because a lot of them do suck.
Yeah, I mean, that's like everything, though.
Still, I'm just saying, 3D printing means, for most people, PLA. And for the most part, that sucks.
I guess.
Yeah. But once you get into the other stuff, it's different.
Hell, some of the new PLA blends are pretty freaking amazing, what they can do. I just print in polycarbonate and just don't worry about it.
You also have a volcano extruder.
It's not a volcano extruder, but yeah, similar. I have I don't even know
I'm
what
just
that
saying
is.
it gets really hot.
Yes. But there is a volcano brand extruder.
Oh,
by
I
the way.
didn't know that.
Yeah, there is.
No, I was saying that as in one that gets just super hot.
No. There actually is one.
Cool.
I wish I had time to get back into resin printing. Just
Do you not do
experiment.
it much?
I want to get into the industrial resin printing stuff, the industrial stuff. I just haven't had time to go and just experiment with it to make it work. That's the thing, is I spent a lot of time experimenting with polycarbonate to get the polycarbonate to work. And now that it works, I literally use it as a printer, like a desktop printer. I push a print to it, it spools up, starts up, prints. A couple hours later, what was it that in our forum, in our Slack channel said? Tony W. 3D printers are close to magic when they are fully functioning.
Oh, they're replicators.
You make a wish in Fusion 360, export the wish, and then boom, next morning you got your part.
You should put that quote in here. If people say good stuff in the Slack channel, we should quote them and call them out on the episode.
Yeah. Oh, that was another thing that they want us to do even more of, even though they said that we do a good job of it already.
Calling out people.
That sounds like such a bad way of doing it.
No,
No, just
engagement.
engagement with the community.
I think we do a pretty damn good job of that.
Yes, they just said that that's like a way we can further doing it more and more often.
Yeah, I think if we see funny or good quotes, call them out. Is Atomic Loofah Control still our best episode? I don't get it because that one was rambly.
Mm-hmm. And like we were all shit faced.
Yeah, and drunk. Yeah. And like even the whole like main topic of loofah stuff was there was no plan to talk about that. That
No.
was off the cuff. That was Chris Kraft just being like, "Brah."
Yeah.
Chris Kraft is so dry. The guy barely even laughs,
No.
like ever.
But as he's telling a joke too, he reminds me of a lot of Norm Macdonald. How Norm Macdonald, how he would deliver his jokes. Chris Kraft is a lot like,
barely even a smile on his
yeah,
face.
not even acknowledging that he's going to do a joke or he's doing a joke.
Yeah, it just lands, and you're like, "Geez," like that's. Look, Chris Kraft is cool, but that's almost like psychopath level. Actually, did I'm curious? Did the podcast people mention anything at all about the Star Wars episodes?
No.
That's so on point. Like we do the Star Wars episodes. I swear I haven't even seen a comment in our Slack channel ever about the Star Wars episodes.
I think they do when we bring it up.
Maybe
for the
there
first
has
time.
been, but it is funny that like we do these episodes and like nobody says a thing about them. Friday, dude. It's happening Friday.
Oh yeah, I gotta get my plane ticket.
Well, no, I mean this Friday is Zelda. Next
Oh.
Friday is Crawfish.
Oh yeah, I haven't even paid attention to Zelda. It's got too much other stuff going on.
I think it's funny because Lauren and I got tickets to a beer festival that's in the park across the street from us. So we can almost walk to this beer festival. And this is the one time where I'm like, oh man, I have to stop playing video games to go get beer. like, like I almost don't want to go get beer because I want to play Zelda. Oh, we should make a list of all the things I need to snag for the crawfish boil.
You want to talk about the crawfish boil on the podcast?
They want a variety of topics, right?
Yeah. You might get some people asking if they can show up.
I would totally say yes.
There's your topic right there. Start adding stuff.
Why is it bold?
I don't know. It like defaults to like
It
the
defaults
previous one.
It's annoying.
It's really annoying. Yeah.
This okay. This will be fun. This will be fun. We can make a shopping list live, and then I could just take the notes and go buy the stuff.
Oh, it sounds like my print's done.
Oh yeah, I don't hear the high-pitched whine of stepper motors.
No.
NEMA, what, 17s or something like that? Little guys?
Well, I think they're 23s actually.
Oh, that's actually pretty big.
Yeah, they're about what, this big?
That's probably a 23.
Maybe.
NEMA 23 is about 2 inches by 2 inches.
And that did not copy paste well at all. You want to? Well, we'll see how far we get in some of this stuff.
I'm grabbing small taster glasses so we can do a whole bunch of beer tastings.
Ooh.
With all kinds of stuff because I've got some fun stuff coming. Some stuff from California. Got a bunch of stuff from Texas coming. Got a bunch of cool Colorado beers. So this is gonna be awesome, man. I'm really looking forward to it. And just a shitload of crawfish. It was funny because I was talking to someone the other day and they're like, "Oh, maybe we can go and just like have a bunch of lawn chairs and blah blah blah." And I was like, "Yeah, that's cool and all, but I was just gonna dump all the crawfish out on a table and you just gotta stand around and eat it."
Yeah, that's normally
like-
what you do.
Yeah, like a caveman. It's how you do it.
All right, let's go ahead and start this podcast before we keep talking.
We already have 2 pages of notes.
Yeah. So, yeah, all of 30 minutes ago, we had 0. I let's just run with it. Let's see what happens.
What were you gonna say?
No, I just think it's funny that like, I've always tried to shy away from adding more non-electrical engineering thing, but it sounds like that might be the thing to do, is just do everything that we do.
I feel like we've been doing this for almost 8 years now.
Yeah.
I feel like in the last 2 years we're less electrical engineering.
Yes.
More just random.
More random, yeah. Definitely, for sure.
In many ways, I think that's because the things that we talk about, the things that like we do on a regular basis, we talk about less. Like you talk about pinball less, and I talk about amps less.
Yeah.
So that just means everything else.
Well, I mean, there's just no pinball stuff.
And there's not a lot of amp stuff for me to talk about. So.
Yeah.
I guess I should probably fire up YouTube.
Yeah.
Just in case someone asks a question. One watching now. That's probably me.
Probably. Welcome to the MacFab Engineering Podcast, a weekly show about all things engineering, DIY projects, manufacturing, industry news, and cooking crawfish. We're your hosts, electrical engineers, Parker Dillman.
And Stephen Craig.
Well, I thought about adding, like, electrical engineer chefs in there, but whatever.
This may be the first time where we're actually going to talk about cooking in depth. I'm sure we've talked about it before.
Yeah.
You know what? We may not even talk about it in depth. This is just a random topic.
Yeah, we have no idea yet.
It's going to be fun. Yeah.
And this is episode 378, the one that we talk about crawfish, maybe. So we have some podcast news. We're switching our podcast hosting company. The company that we currently use basically sent out like a notification like on a Friday that like, hey, they basically sent out an email, like not even like an email, like just a notification that when I logged in to upload that week's episode of like, they were like, hey, we're suspending our hosting services, so good luck. And they're like,
Question mark?
yeah, well, yeah, because they were like, oh, we're going to suspend this service. And I'm like, okay, when? And they're like, the dates when we suspend it, this is like not a exact quote, but it was like the dates we are going to suspend these services may change, but they didn't give a date. They just said the dates may change.
That sounds like the plane's going down, and they're just trying to like hold the yoke and hold the.
I guess. And so I spent like half my day on Friday building it back up, and then we transferred, and I didn't do the transfer. Michelle, who's lead of marketing, he did the transferring over to our new host. I don't think it's fully done yet. Like, we have now 2 RSS feeds for the podcast, and then eventually one will be deprecated, and then the next one will take over. So hopefully there's no service interruptions of the podcast. If, like, for some reason the podcast episode goes missing, like for 1 week, it's probably not missing. It's probably just like the RSS feed on your app is like all messed up. So,
Okay, I was about to ask. All of that said, what does that mean to our listeners?
hopefully nothing.
Hopefully nothing. But if we're still recording, we're still doing this podcast. So if you don't get one on the normal time, that may be the reason.
Yes. Going to try to make sure there's none, but podcast stuff is really weird because it's like old school technology of RSS feeds, and then like the podcast apps like read that, but then like if there's 2 feeds, like what does it do? I have no idea yet. We'll see. We already switched hosts once and it wasn't a big deal, so who knows?
Yeah. Okay, but I'm looking at our notes. There's some other podcast news that we've been talking about for months, and you didn't even put it on here. What happened just a few days ago on May the 4th?
Oh, we on May the 4th we had a Macrofab event, the first Macrofab meetup in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. So how did it all go?
It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of people show up. A lot of people wanted to talk to me about the podcast. That was a lot of fun. Matthew Prater. I think I'm saying his last name right.
Prater, I think.
Prater. That's correct. It has an R in it. He actually showed up from Arizona.
Oh, no lie.
Yeah, he went to go hang out at NASA too for a while, but we're probably going to do another podcast with him next. I don't think we ever set a date, so we have to figure that out with him.
But it will happen.
He is a professor from Arizona. From what college is that in Arizona? You know what? I'm going to look it up real quick.
Matthew Prater.
Yeah, that was episode like 100 and something, 193.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yes. The University of Advanced Technology in Arizona.
Okay, so if you hold these things, then or these events, then you now know that you may get people out of state.
Yes, that's kind of cool.
That's awesome, actually. Well, if you're listening, thanks, Matthew.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun talking to you again, Matthew, and I'm hoping we can do another podcast together. We have to figure out some topics, but I think we can make it work.
Was it a good turnout?
Yeah, it was a pretty good turnout. Probably a little bit less than probably what the marketing wanted, but it was about what I thought it would be.
That sounds fairly normal, though. Like, marketing's probably like, we're going to have 2,000 people here.
Actually, what's interesting is, I don't know if you saw the email from Matthew, because he listened to last week's episode about how radiation affects electronics, because that was actually one of his previous careers, jobs, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
I have seen that, and I've read through a little bit of it. I've been so busy recently. I started a new job, and it's consuming my time right now. So I'm a little bit behind on my communication with people. So that is one I will need to take care of. But yes, I did see that.
All right. So we're going to have a couple topics. on this week's episode. I'm hoping we get to them all because like we started writing notes and the notes eventually went to 2 pages, which is a lot more than we normally have.
It's funny because we get usually we write notes for this. We have ideas of what we're going to talk about before the podcast, but most of the time the notes don't exist until 15 minutes before we start recording. And so a lot of times I have no idea what Parker's going to talk about. And this is one of those times where it's like we both had a blank page, and 5 minutes later it just exploded into all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I guess half of this is me copy pasting something from the Texas DMV occupations code, so that doesn't really count.
You know, I had a class back in college it was technical writing. I took technical writing over a summer semester because I was working full time at a place doing computer monitor repair on old CRT monitors. It was awesome. Like we did component level repair on CRT monitors, and for the end of the semester project you had to write a manual for something, and I asked the professor, I was like, could I write a repair manual for these monitors? And he was like, yeah, that's perfect, that's like exactly what I'm looking for. So I ended up writing a repair manual for it, and it was probably 10 or 15 pages of actual repair information, but then I put all the schematics and I put all of the assembly drawings in it. And so, you know, people are turning in these like 2 or 3 page like documents. I show up and I slap this whole document package down on the professor's desk.
1-inch binder.
It was like 90 something pages. It was a book. I gave him a whole book, and he's like, what the hell? And I was like, don't worry, it's like all schematics.
That's awesome.
I got an A on it.
All right, so we're going to talk about we're going to actually probably make the box truck an official MacFab Engineering podcast project now. Instead of something that we just kind of talk about in the hush-hush background of things. We have a crawfish boil that Steven is doing soon. Unfortunately, it is not a MacroFab event, so you can't go to macrofab.com/events and sign up for a crawfish boil.
I wish.
Yeah. Then we're going to talk about 3D printing, and then Steven's CNC machine. See if we can get through all these, because these are like pretty beefy.
And we're like 10 minutes in already.
Yeah.
All right, box truck.
Actually, I think we should do the crawfish boil first.
Okay, yeah, let's do So it's just so happened that a friend of mine came up to me and invited me to go get crawfish the other day. And crawfish in Colorado is kind of a weird thing. Let's just put it this way. There's no native crawfish to the mountains out here. And so he invited me to go get crawfish, and we went, and it was, it was expensive and like not that great. And he turned to me as we're eating this crawfish. He's like, we could do this better. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I've done a few crawfish boils.
He comes up to you the next day with like the deed of a restaurant that he just bought.
And it's funny because he hits me up and he's like, this we could do this so much better. He's like, what if we did a crawfish boil? I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. We should plan something. And then I hear that Parker is coming up here in just like 2 weeks, maybe
2 weeks.
Less than 2 weeks now, for a completely unrelated thing. So I was like, okay, you know what, Parker, do you want to do a crawfish boil? And his eyes lit up.
It's like, yes.
It doesn't take much to have a crawfish boil with a Texan. In fact, I think it's important to note, or important to say, like, what is a crawfish boil, because we probably have a lot of listeners that have no idea.
Or what is a
crawfish oil?
Yeah, what is a crawfish?
A mud bug. Crawfish are like what?
Lobsters.
Freshwater lobsters.
Lobsters that live in the bayou.
And they make little mud domes or mud huts by the water, and they don't look appetizing. Let's put it that way. They're these little things that look like very miniature lobsters, and you boil the snot out of them with some really tasty spices, and you eat the meat out of their tail. and it's like an all-day event. It's a fun thing, and we're having a crawfish boil up in Colorado, and we actually ended up finding a Asian mart up here that gets sacks of crawfish shipped up from the south twice a week, and they usually service restaurants up here that service crawfish. But if you're willing to buy 30 or 40 pounds at a time, they're happy to sell you a sack of it, which is perfect for the amount of people that are coming. 30 to 40 pounds is enough for Parker alone, right?
2 Parkers.
Two Parkers. I can do about 3 pounds of crawfish, and then I'm like, okay, I need to sit down.
I can eat a ton of crawfish, but I'm an experienced eater.
Yeah. Crawfish boils are weird. They're very weird unless you've actually, unless you've experienced it. Like, you have to go through it because it's a thing. And the thing about crawfish, you don't really get much meat out of each crawfish, so it seems like you're eating a lot because you eat like for a long period of time, but you get such little amount of protein each bite that it's like, I don't know, it's a fun thing that you can do with a group of people. And traditionally the way you do it is you have a big table, you boil the snot out of however many pounds of crawfish your boiler can handle, and then you strain them out and you just pour them on the table, and everyone just stands around the table and eats crawfish. I don't know. It's
what's
really
going to be
fun.
interesting is I've never cooked them at that altitude before. I mean, the highest altitude I've ever cooked crawfish at is like 45 feet.
So that was one of the weirdest things to get used to living up here in Colorado. In the summer, water boils at 203 degrees at my house, and I'm about 100 feet over a mile, 100 feet over 5280. And in the winter, when it's drier, water will boil at 201 degrees. And so it just boils really quickly. The boil off rate that I've experienced here, and of course I'm an engineer, I've measured how much water boils off, mainly for beer brewing, but in at sea level, it's usually about a gallon of water per hour based off your vessel. That's a good rule of thumb. You boil 1 gallon of water every hour. Up here, it's about 1.25 gallons an hour. So
about 25% more.
Because of the dryness and because of the altitude, you get to a boil way faster. So it changes all the ways you cook. However, boiling is boiling at the end of the day, and really what we're doing is just heating up the crawfish and mildly cooking them, so I don't think we're gonna have to do anything special.
I would ask that what is it, the Asian Mart?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would ask the Asian Mart if there's be like, hey, is there any difference cooking them up here versus like at sea level, like time wise? Because it's very like, because you cook them via time wise. And because usually depending on it also depends on the size of the crawfish too. Like, big crawfish take longer to cook than smaller crawfish. And typically it's like 2 to 4 minutes on the boil, and then like 15 minutes to 20 minutes on the soak, depending on like how big and small they are. So like the smaller they are, the shorter the boil, and the shorter the soak, etc., etc. And you kind of have to like guess on like how big they are, and then shoot for that, like do the first batch and just make sure and then eat them and be like, oh, are they overcooked or are they undercooked? And then adjust your time on that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
we'll have to figure it out. We'll do progressive batches because we're shooting for about 40 pounds, and the vessel that we can boil in, I have a beer keg, not the 5-gallon one, but a full 15-gallon one that I'm going to take an angle grinder to, and I'm just going to cut the top off of it. The nice thing about beer kegs is they're stainless steel, and so they're sanitary to boil things in. And so it makes a really cheap, and for me it was free because someone just gave it to me. It's a cheap way to make a giant vessel for boiling things. So that's my plan. at the moment. But even in a 15-gallon, keg, I can only boil, I don't know, 10, 15 pounds at a time. And so we're going to have to do progressive batches, which the fun thing about a crawfish boil, and Parker was, mentioning this to me last week, is you make your first batch kind of light on the seasoning. Maybe not light, but you do a guesstimate on the seasoning. And then if it's not hot enough, you spike it a little bit more for the next batch. And then you keep doing that as you go along.
Yeah, the trick is you keep adding progressive spiciness to the batch. And so each batch gets spicier throughout the night as you're cooking.
Right.
That's kind of like been my ritual in terms of when I cook. So like
ritual.
It is.
I love it. I love it. That's so great.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And you need a cooler.
Yes.
Because you let them rest as well.
Right.
So it's there's a boil, a soak, and then a rest, and then you get to eat them.
Yeah, for sure. I have a cooler. It's not massive, so I think it'll be good for the smaller batches.
Yeah, it'd be fine. Yeah. I like how Emmett in our chat, it says it's like pancakes, always going to mess up the first one. Usually you get it close enough where it's fine. I've never had the first batch being just completely like burnt or ruined, like usually what happens with pancakes.
I was about to say I've had that with pancakes many times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have here us making the list that you need to get.
Well, okay, so it has actually been a while since I have been in charge of a boil. I've certainly participated in them, but there's kind of two things you need that are not the accoutrement, like corn and potatoes and stuff like that. The spices. What do we need for the boil, and what do we need for the post-boil to do this?
All right, so boil ingredients, you need butter. Butter, salt. Those are the two of the main ones. And then you need a boil, like, I just use like a boil, like catch-all Cajun seasoning.
Yeah.
What do they call that?
I know like the brand Zatarain's has like a crab boil in a jar.
Yeah, that's what I typically use. Yeah. And then there's an oil. And let me get that. I know what it looks. This is things like I know what they all look like.
It's red.
It's red. And it comes in it comes in a jar as well. The thing is, I know what they look like. I don't remember what the brand is called. I think it's just Louisiana crawfish and shrimp boil. Yeah. Here it is. Yeah, it's like you can get it in concentrated or like normal. Let me know if you can find that. If not, then I will be like
you're gonna bring it up.
I'm gonna put it in my carry-on. Oh, not my carry-on, my check bag.
That's so Texan. I love it.
Because there might be something you can't get there. Because the oil does different seasoning tastes to it.
Well, and one of the big things is you mentioned the rest in the cooler. Before you serve them, you spike it with more spice on the outside.
No, I've never done that. I just put
I love that.
I just put the butter on it. So you like your crawfish sloppy style?
Sloppy with spice on the outside, so it gets all over your fingers, and then you're licking your fingers. Oh, it's so good.
See, I don't cook them that way. I do it all the seasoning is in the boil.
Okay, maybe we do a little bit half and half.
No, we can do it that way. This is your boil, by the way. I'm just helping.
Well, it's my boil, correct, but you are more experienced at this than I.
If you want to do it sloppy style, what's the actual term? Like, there's a restaurant here in Houston, I guess in the South in general, called BB's.
Oh man, they're just so good.
And BB's have a special term for it.
I don't remember what.
It's definitely not called sloppy style.
It can be at my house. I'm totally inviting. I have already invited the new engineering team from work, and one of the interesting things about my new engineering team at work, there's like 8 of us. I'm the only one from Colorado who works here, so every single person has been shipped in from somewhere else, and I don't think any of them have had crawfish before. So like this is one of those things where it's like we'll figure out what it's going to be an experience. I mean, if they show up.
Emmett also says he's asking the question: equal parts butter to crawfish? Not quite. It's only like a couple sticks for like
A whole cooler worth.
a whole cooler. Well, not no, that's like a whole sack. I'm thinking of. It's like 34 pounds.
Well, my cooler's not that gigantic.
Yeah, so you would probably do like a stick and a half for 10 pounds. If we're cooking 10 pounds at once.
This is not Paula Deen crawfish here.
No. But so that's like the seasoning.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you have everything else. Oh,
Lemons,
minced.
right?
No, well, add the seasoning because I guess you can call it seasoning. Minced garlic. You can get minced garlic in jars.
You
already
just pour the whole jar.
Whole jars in.
Yep.
That's on top of just throwing in just the garlic clove in.
Oh yeah. I would almost be tempted to do the minced garlic after as part of the sloppy thing, you know?
I like cooking it in
or
there
both.
because you can do both.
Yeah.
There's nothing. It's like everything with cooking Cajun style. There's not really a wrong way of doing it. It's just if you do it a different way, you can just say it's something else. I mean, that's
true.
I mean, I guess that's how food in general works, though.
Well, yeah, to a degree. I mean, there's some cuisines out there that are very particular, and if you deviate even slightly, then you'll get slapped for it. But,
Well, you just call it something else. You just put fusion on it, and then boom, done.
Yeah, I like that. But when it comes to this, like you said, it's my crawfish boil. Or I'm going to call it our crawfish boil because Parker's helping enough to call it ours. So we get to just have fun with it. And, so however it works out.
Then also in the boil, so let's talk about like the adjuncts, which is like the corn, potatoes.
I like that you used the word adjuncts. Yeah, sausage and mushrooms.
Mushrooms is probably one of my favorites. Though I have a new reigning favorite of adjunct addition to it is tortellini.
Oh, right.
That is... I was shocked and appalled the first time I went to a crawfish boil and they used tortellini in the boil. And then I ate it and I'm like, this is the best thing ever. Because it has the cheese inside of it. Yeah. And then the pasta absorbs all the spices as well. So you get this like spicy cheese ball. So good.
We're 25 minutes in and we're just waxing about food here.
That's fine.
Love it. Okay, I think this gives a pretty solid list of what I need to prepare for it. And for the Slack channel out there, for anyone who's listening, if you're not involved, go to this, get involved with the MacFab Slash channel, which is macfab.com/Slack, right?
Yeah, that's an open invite.
We will be posting pictures of all of this, so if you've never seen a crawfish boil, stay tuned for that. I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else that we need to put in that boil.
So in terms of an entire project that comes here, the project is I need to go saw the top off of a keg.
Oh, and have a basket that fits it.
Yeah. So I've been researching that getting a basket's actually kind of difficult. Getting a basket that fits is difficult. So that's on my to-do list.
Don't forget the Tums. Yeah, Emmett's correct on that one. Though,
yeah.
I seem to have a pretty iron stomach when it comes to spices. So that should be fine. At least Cajun spices.
On top of that, this is not particularly healthy, but, you're cutting this while drinking some beer, and that helps keep the acidic content
Lots of
in
beer.
check. Lots of beer.
Are we over budget?
Okay, so Emmett asked, "Are we over budget for the spoil?" You can't be over budget if you don't have a budget.
Exactly.
So, I haven't even priced what this is. I right now we're looking at somewhere between 12 and 20 people doing this. So it's like we're inviting neighbors, we're inviting friends from the neighborhood, all kinds of stuff like that. So, I've been wanting to do something of this sort for a long time. I had some good friends in Houston that would very regularly have driveway parties, I guess you could say, where it was just like they had the grill going. If you wanted to show up with some meat and if you wanted to show up with some beer, you can come hang out and bring your own chair, kind of thing. And I've had some of the best times in my life with these friends in Houston. And after moving up to Colorado, we didn't have friends like that, and I've been wanting to become that for my neighborhood because I don't see that very often. I don't see, like, my neighbors to the left and right of me. I know their names, but that's about it, kind of thing. Or I'll wave to them when we're both mowing the lawn. I've been kind of wanting to be that presence in my neighborhood, and I think a crawfish boil like this is a really good excuse for becoming that.
I can't wait. I'm starving right now.
Okay, well, let's stop talking about food and start talking about engineering then.
Okay. Are you sure you want to talk about engineering, or do you want to talk about 3D printing? I guess this is engineering. 3D
this
printing.
Is totally engineering. Yeah.
Okay, so this is spurred kind of from Tony W. from our Slack channel. They were working on a project, and this is just a great quote. And they said, I find 3D printers to be close to magic. You make a wish in Fusion 360, export the wish to the Voron, and voila. You wake up the next morning and your wish is on the build plate. I guess Voron is their 3D printer. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but the point is, it is magic. It's absolutely magic. I mean, it's the very beginning step of a Star Trek replicator, right? How far away from saying Earl Grey hot, and it just appears in front of you.
Maybe not that, but definitely like anything made out of plastic.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to talk about is kind of like my current state in 3D printing and what I've built recently with 3D printing, I guess.
In fact, as we were writing the notes for this episode, all I heard in the background was the warm whirring of stepper motors as Parker was printing something.
Yeah, fortunately, it finished like a couple minutes before we started the podcast, so don't have to worry about the noise. Okay, so I currently just print in polycarbonate from Polymaker. They make a material called, I think it's like poly... let me just read off the real, it's like right here. Polymax PC. That's all I print in. I do find it really... I'm not a 3D printing enthusiast. And what I mean by that is, once I set up this printer to work really well with this material, I kind of don't want to mess with it. Because I do treat it like... almost like a Star Trek replicator, right? I design my thing in Fusion 360, export it to Cura, the slicer. I never even adjust any of the slicer settings anymore. I just click print.
And yeah, when you say export to Cura, you mean make a wish, right?
Yeah, make a wish. Yes. And it starts up, and then it heats up the build plate, and it starts up and prints, and then I have my part like a couple hours later. Now I know how to design for this material really well, this polycarbonate material, so I know like stuff will print well. So sometimes I might have to go in and adjust like supports or something, but usually most of the time I print without supports. I just make sure my design doesn't need them. And it's one of those like, what else can I do with 3D printing, I guess, at this point? Like, what's next, right? So I did get like a resin printer. I got an Elegoo Mars 3. Before that, I had a Mars 2. Love resin printing. The problem is most of my prints are industrial style brackets and spacers and stuff, which don't really play really well with the resin printer in terms of like the material strength. Now, there are like super strong materials that you can resin print, but I haven't had the time to sit down and just dial that in. So back on FDM printing with my printer is what other materials are there should I be looking at? Like that's because I basically once I found like this material and it works really well in a lot of situations I use it in, I kind of stopped looking. I guess that makes me not a 3D printer enthusiast, right? Once I got it dialed in, I'm like, well, that's good enough now. I don't see a point in keeping going.
Yeah, and you're not doing things like mixing colors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Doing like rainbow prints.
Yeah. I'm almost at the point where, like, if I wanted to do something else, I would have to get another 3D printer to even do that kind of stuff with. And I'm so out of touch of, like, actually looking at the, like, specs on 3D printers. I don't know what's good or bad anymore. Because what I have is a Wanhao D6, a Duplicator 6, and it's heavily modified at this point. Almost nothing about it is still stock. So I wonder if there's like a printer out there. Like I'd like to get into printing what's called TPU, which is like a flexible, rubbery material. And that's also to do the kind of the same thing I'm doing with polycarbonate, is building like maybe brackets and isolators and that kind of stuff for automotive stuff. So I can print like the right U-shaped isolator for like the radiator mount on my 1965 Checker, because you can't get that part anymore. So it would be nice just to be able to just be like, oh, here's the design, print it, boom, in a couple hours it's done. But I would have to go and get a printer to do that, because I am not tearing apart this printer that prints polycarbonate beautifully.
Yeah, you've got it dialed in. You were looking at the what was it? The Elegoo Jupiter?
They have a larger. Yeah, that's the resin printer, yes. But this is back on like FDM, which is like how my Wanhao D6 is. With like you have a spool of it and you like extrude it out.
Right.
Now there are flexible materials with resin as well that I could look into. Is that people out there in chat? Is that what I should do? I know about TPU in FDM, which is also really high temperature and has good oil resist. It's like a really good material for cars. But I don't know if there's a comparable material for resin printing. And another thing, I've mentioned this before, I'd really want to get into chroming or just plating 3D prints. The big thing with that is you have to make your print electroconductive before you print it. Though there was a way, I think you can copper wash it, which helps. I just haven't experimented with that yet either.
I'm seeing something called FX60, which is a flexible resin rubber like TPU like. So it's basically the resin version of TPU.
Gotcha. I'm going to kind of lean on the community to tell me what I should do next.
Yeah, not me. I'm just Googling stuff.
Because, Steven, you have a 3D printer.
I do. And I have been using it more regularly now. And actually, in relation to my CNC project, there's lots of little brackets and little tiny things that it becomes really useful for. In fact, when dealing with a project like my CNC, sometimes it can become difficult to just pre-plan because there's just so many parts that are involved in the whole build. And one of the things I recently ran into is I bought a NEMA 34 stepper motor for my Z mount, which is I have all the correct bolt patterns and everything like that. So all of my aluminum machining that I did months ago all works out. But the stepper motor I have has a longer shaft than what was originally designed for. So I have kind of two options here. I could take a grinder and grind the shaft down to whatever size I want, or I could make some spacers. And I was like, I'll just use my 3D printer and I'll just pop in a few spacers. And so like it's been really invaluable for things like that, where it's just like on the fly I need to make something and I want to make it out of something that's not like it's hobbyist grade, but I don't want to make it out of something like wood that just lowers the, I don't know, coolness factor of my CNC. So yeah, so my little printer, what is it? It's a Monoprice. I don't even remember what the model number of it is, but it has a really small print area. It's a circular print area that's 120 millimeters. So there's not a whole lot that you can do with it. There's a lot you can do with it, but as soon as you start getting ideas, you can easily get over 120 millimeters in build print size. But it's also kind of fun to be restricted like that, because now I have to design all my brackets to fit within that envelope. I can't just be like, make a whole giant bracket for a NEMA 34, because the NEMA 34 is bigger than 120 millimeters. So now I got to be more creative with it. And frankly, I think that's kind of fun. So, are we moving on to?
Yeah, I think we're gonna move on from 3D printing. Let us know in the Slack channel what I should do. What should Parker do for his next printer? Or just like maybe someone's done more experiments with resin printers, like industrial materials in resin printers, that I can like glean more insight into. Because I don't have time to experiment.
You're a busy man now.
Well, we all are.
Yeah, no lie.
Okay. So I don't know if I want to talk about. We said the box truck, so let's just do it. Because I'm actually holding some 3D prints, which is not for the box truck. They're for the checker.
Oh, nice.
But so we're gonna make the box truck kind of an official project of the podcast. Talk about on the project. MacFab's not paying for it. I guess technically they're indirectly paying for it, because MacFab pays me my salary, and then I go pay for all my parts, right?
Yeah, pass through.
Yeah. So the I think the last time we talked about it, all the auxiliary electrical stuff was done. And auxiliary electrical on the truck side was done.
Yeah, but you hadn't even touched the box side.
And I still haven't.
And that's the end of the topic.
No, that's not the end. So I got a transmission cooler and its fan wired in and installed, plumbed, all that good stuff. I did that on Saturday.
What do you need a transmission cooler for?
So it has an automatic transmission, and almost all automatic transmissions need some kind of external cooler circuit to keep them cool, because they run really hot. There's a lot of excess friction in there because they use clutch packs and a torque converter that generate a lot of heat, and so you have to get rid of that heat. And for what's stock on my truck is kind of like barely adequate for what it does, meaning pushing a big box around in the air. And I'm also going to start doing towing with this box truck. And so I'm like, okay, now I need additional cooling for the truck, for the transmission, to keep the temperatures in check. So I installed I already had a transmission cooler and fan set up from a previous project that I ended up not using. So it's just sitting in a box. I'm like, that will work fine. So I was able to install it, made some brackets, welded some brackets together, installed them underneath the box truck. And then I wired up all the relay and switches. I don't really need like the computer, the truck to tell it to turn on and off. I just used a little thermal switch. So it's got like if it gets over 185 Fahrenheit, it turns on. And if it goes under 160, it turns off. And instead of I think actually on my red Jeep, I have it set to where like all the current of the fan goes through the thermal switch, which seems to be fine, but everyone keeps saying that's not a good idea. Seems to be fine. It's been running that way for like a decade now.
Why would that not be a good idea? Self-heating or something like that?
It's something about like they're not rated for like the inrush current of the fans.
Oh, okay.
Now, the one on my Jeep's been running when I installed that. I think I installed that actually was in college. So it's probably been on that Jeep for like 15 years now. But this fan is bigger than that other one. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do it the quote right way, unquote. So I installed a relay. And so how I wired that up is basically like, the voltage, the power off the battery comes in. And it's actually on the switch side. So the ignition switch has to be turned on for this fan to turn on to begin with. So switch voltage comes in. It goes onto the high side of the relay. And then it also goes into the high side of the activation side, the coil side of the relay. And then the downstream side of the power side of the relay goes directly into the fan. But on the downstream side of the coil, I have that go to the thermal switch, and then the bottom side of the thermal switch goes to ground. And so when the thermal switch activates, that actually turns on the relay, which is only like 100 milliamps versus, I think the fan's rated at like 9 amp running. Let alone, I don't even know what the inrush is, which is probably like 18. Seems to run fine on the 15 amp fuse, so we're just going to keep it at that. And so that base took up all Saturday, was routing all that tubing and stuff, and because I had to make all the hoses out of AN, which is Army Navy fittings. They're like 37-degree screw taper fittings, so as it tightens it's a flare fitting, so there's no sealant or threads the seal. It's just the mating surfaces need to be perfectly machined, so when it comes together, it seals. Most of the time. Usually, like, you have to get like the torque just right on them, and they're easy to under or over tighten. But usually, when you over tighten them, you just have to like back them off a little bit, and then you kind of like wiggle the fitting and then tighten it back up, and it's usually fine.
And it goes back to being perfect.
Yeah, it goes back to being perfect. But yeah, that took like almost all day on Saturday. It always shocks me how long it takes to do stuff the right way. Like your projects, that it's always shocking how long that takes sometimes. We're like, I can just throw some zip ties on this thing and be done with it. And like, no, 5 hours later, you made like 8 different brackets that hold everything just right. I finished up the rear light wiring now, so like I have like fancy brake lights and everything. That's all good.
Like big boxy lights.
Yeah, from like semi trucks. So they're really bright, really nice. Should last for the lifespan of the truck. And then I was like going through some of my old parts up in the attic, and I found my old onboard air system. And what that is just like, think about like a compressor that you have in your garage. Same thing, except onboard just means it goes on your vehicle. That's the only difference. I found my old onboard air system that I had on the red Jeep like 8 years ago at this point. And I had all the parts. I'm like, oh, I'll just throw this on the truck. And now the truck has onboard air. So that's really nice.
What fills the tank? Is there's a small air compressor that goes with it?
There's a electric air compressor that fills it.
How long does that take to fill?
To fill, it's a 3-gallon tank. And to fill it to 200 PSI, it takes about 10 minutes.
Oh, that's not terrible.
No, it's not too bad.
Is it like on a switch, or do you keep it filled basically continuously?
So I do have it switched. I have it runs off one of my switches on my dash I installed, the auxiliary switches I put in. But it has its own pressure switch as well. So when you apply power to it, it makes sure that it's not going to overpressurize the tank. Now there's also like an overpressure valve. because I think it's like a 200 psi tank rated. I think it can go up to like, I want to say 250 is its like maximum safety. So I have like a 217 or 215 pressure valve on it. So if it hits 215, it will blow the valve.
And the purpose of this is just having air available for tires or for tools?
Filling
or
up
what?
tires and then running pneumatic tools. So like if you need to change a tire or anything like that, you have that onboard air
You have
capability.
air on tap.
Yeah, it's great for the Jeep because like when you go off road, you lower the pressure of your tires to like 5 pounds of pressure, and then when you go back on the road, you got to fill them back up to like 28, and you have like ginormous tires which take a lot of air. And so having like a system like this works really well for that. Now, I don't probably really need one on the box truck, but it's like I have all the stuff and it has lots of room underneath to put lots of stuff. So it went on. So
Why not?
yeah, why not? It only took like an hour to install, so it was great. It wasn't too bad. It actually took me longer to run the power wire from the front to the back of the truck than it did to do the rest of the install.
Did you run it through the frame or how
Yeah,
did
I
you-
have like when I did the trailer wiring in the back, I ran like a really big, like, I think it's like a 1.5 inch diameter loom all the way. Even though that was way too big for that trailer wiring, I knew I was going to run extra wiring. So I ran a big loom already that goes like through the frame and, around the woods and takes a left at Albuquerque and goes into the engine bay.
Yeah.
I've never used so much wiring harness tape on a project. I've gone through, usually like a project takes like one roll of wiring harness tape. This truck is not even done yet. It's three rolls so
Yeah.
far.
Well, how long is the truck? It's 20-something feet, right?
It's an 18-foot box. So that means like the truck is like 22 feet, 23 feet long.
Right, so your runs are quite
20,
long.
yeah. Basically, whenever you I found out it's basically you cut your wire to 25 feet and then start fishing that through, and usually you end up with like, depending on the route, of course, because there's wiggles and stuff like that. You usually end up with about a foot to maybe about a foot and a half extra, which is about perfect.
That's not that much extra, actually. But, hey, if it works.
Yeah. Well, you cut that and you put your terminal on the end and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah. So what's next on the list? Well, it is not starting on the RV yet. Of course. I got to install a spare tire holder. I got to figure out how I want to design that. Actually, we can talk about that here. Is after we do this list. And then check for leaks in the transmission lines. Got to check for those leaks. Make sure everything is hunky-dory. And the only way to do that is to drive it around, really.
I think it's important to note that you're doing all of this to a virtually brand new box truck. It's
Yeah.
not like you're restoring something or fixing problems.
No, that's actually a great thing because it'd be like on jack stands if I had to restore it. Like
Yeah.
I don't have to touch the suspension, the engine. I'm putting it in a cooler to make the brand new transmission that's in it last longer.
Mhm.
That's what I'm doing it for. Because without it, it would probably only last like 60,000 miles. But with it, it'll probably easily do double.
Well, it would only last 60,000 miles with hauling a bunch of crap, right?
Yes. But you got to think about it this way. It's not a daily driver. It's going to be, the box truck is going to be used infrequently. But when
It's
it's
a crap
used,
hauler.
yeah, but when it's used, it's going to be like abused almost. Like it's going to be hauling the RV and a trailer with a Jeep on it across the nation every single time
Yeah.
it gets used.
The duty cycle is short bursts, but they're 100%.
100% do. Yeah.
And which is actually like the most stressful
Yes, the most stressful.
possible.
Yeah. So I'm doing a lot of like preemptive setup to make sure that it can handle that kind of duty cycle and those kind of rates. So coolers, better filtering systems, that kind of stuff. And then the last thing I need to do before I can kind of move on to the RV section is install I have a 360-degree camera system to install. I just started installing that, which is like installing the cameras and the sonic sense. It has like backup sensors and stuff. Got to put that in. That shouldn't be too bad. That's like drilling a couple holes and running the wire.
And that's actually gets mounted in the box, basically, right? In the top of the box.
Top of the box, facing down. So it's going to be like how modern like luxury vehicles have those like really fancy like camera systems that you can like spin the car around and look around. It's actually going to get one of those, except it's designed for like buses. I think it's what the system's designed for.
Yeah.
Do I need that? No. Do I want it? Yes.
How many cameras is it? Is it 4?
It's a 6-camera system.
6? Wow.
Yeah, I opted for the 6-camera system because of the trailer.
Oh, sure.
So I can have the 2 side cameras can be spaced farther apart, so I can cover more of like the trailer area around the back of the box truck. We'll see how well it works. So actually on the spare tire holder, I have a bunch of like, I'm trying to build this with like the least amount of, like with most of these projects on this box truck, buying the least amount of stuff and trying to reuse stuff I've collected over 10 years
like
of working
that
on
random air tank you have in your attic.
Yeah. So I actually have some spare tire like hoists that I pulled off of cars and didn't steal them. Pulled them off of like when I went to like go to like a junkyard, because I was going to install a spare tire hoist on the Wagoneer at one point and ended up not doing it. So I have a bunch of like different shape ones that I got from the junkyard. I did not go underneath people's cars and take them.
Cut them off.
So I have a couple different shapes and sizes that I can like choose from. But it's more about not really like what hoist I'm picking, but how you activate the hoist. And they're manually powered, so usually you stick like a rod in and then you turn it and to raise and lower it. I have one that you can access from the top. So you put a tool down through like your floor and you spin it that way. And then one's from the side. And I don't know which way I want to go yet. If I go through the side, I have to punch a hole in the side of the box truck, like below, so it's not in the box itself. Punch a hole in the side, but then I have to figure out like, how do I make that hole not look like a hole in the truck? Like put a panel or something over it, like
like a little like flip hood or something like that.
Yeah, but it's like the hole only needs to be like an inch in diameter, and so I was actually having a hard time finding like a right kind of fitting that would look flush and look nice. Will look nice on a box truck at least. And, you know, I don't want it to be like, oh.
I mean, it's a box truck. What's wrong with the side access? Point, because the box truck sits high enough that you can get under it pretty easily. You don't need to go through the floor.
Well, I'm looking at this as like, I guess if you're having to change a tire, getting like, let's say it's soaking wet, getting wet isn't too big of a concern. But I would not like, I'd like to be able to lower it down without having to like crawl underneath it, underneath the box truck.
Do you have is it dual tires in the back?
Yeah, duals.
Okay. So how many tires are you going to be hauling around?
Just one spare.
Okay.
Yeah. If you need more than that, then you're probably getting a tow.
Probably.
But the other one goes through the floor, which would be a lot easier to one. Like I can get a smaller, like I can get like a twist style, like a floor, almost like a clean out for like a PVC pipe. I can put like in the floor or something like that. I don't know yet. It's more of like I have access to like almost all the different styles of spare tire hoists, but I haven't really figured out how I want to be able to access the hoist. And that really dictates like how all that works. But yeah, no, it's actually, you can't really, because it's going to be going between 2 I-beams. under the floor, so you can't really actually go underneath to access it because you'd have to go over the tire, and there'd be no way to do that. So you are, if it's a side spinny part, I don't know what to call it. This, you activate the hoist with side access. You are going to have a hole in the side of the truck to hit it. And just having like a plug or something. And I'm also thinking about like people messing with it, and like you come in and the plug's missing, or like someone's like messed with it. And I don't want it bigger than it needs to be, right? Like, sure, I might be able to get like a fuel door that will fit it, but that's like 6 inches by 6 inches for a 1 inch hole.
But that 1 inch hole, you don't drill it properly the first time, and then it needs to be a 3 inch hole.
So I just already cut a 6 inch rectangle out of my box truck.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm almost thinking you've probably seen these before. Like, they're in venues and things like that for like hatches on the floor that you can open up and you get access to, like mains outlets and things like that, where it has a little like swing latch that you can get your finger under. That's what's going through my head. If you can install one of those on the floor such that it's flush, but you can access the latch and open it up. Even if it was like a mains outlet, not the outlet itself, but the hatch that gives access to it, I think that would work out well.
Yeah, I think last time I looked at those, they were really expensive.
Really? Okay.
But yeah, because I want something that can take, if it's on the floor,
you can just walk on it. No
I
problem.
want something you can easily walk on and not have to worry about breaking it.
Well, you also want to walk on it and not know that you're walking on it. I know that's like a.
No, you're right. I want it to be actually.
But you don't want to. You don't want to trip on it or anything like that.
Yeah.
No.
Because I was looking at they make those round marine style access ports where they have the little spin in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, that would work great. Like, but the problem is they do protrude a bit, and I couldn't figure out a good way how to, at least with my current tools, how to countersink that flange, right? Because I'm like, you could cut the hole, and then you would need like a rabbit router bit to like cut, like to do a countersunk flange.
Well, okay. What's the floor of the box truck made of?
Plywood. It's like 5/4 plywood.
5/4. Okay. It's an interesting.
That's actually how you measure wood in the United States. So you don't say 1.25 inches, you say 5/4.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, that's actually fairly thick, to be honest.
Yeah. It's actually rated for a forklift to drive on it.
Yeah, at that thickness, that makes sense. But you could just hand route it. That's not a problem to just plunge it to a particular depth.
I don't have the route. The only router I have is a 1/4 inch bit router, and they don't make a rabbit that can do. Basically, it has to be like it's a 0.8 inch cut flange. That's how big the flange is. They don't make a rabbit bit that fits that router, so I had to get another router. So that already throws out the try to use what you've got rule on this truck so far. I've been pretty happy with like what I've been able to repurpose so far on this truck. And I don't want to like ruin it by having to buy some fancy tool for doing a plunge
for just
cut.
a minimal amount of work.
Yeah. And it's like, could I 3D print something? Possibly.
You want to be able to cut through the thing all the way and install something that ends up being flush.
Yes.
So it would need to bottom mount and have the correct thickness.
Yeah, if I was going through the floor.
Right.
If I was going through the floor, that's what I was thinking is like maybe I would 3D print like a flange that I could bolt upwards that would have threads. And I wonder if I should just like model the threads too. Like some coarse threads, and then it has like you know what, if I actually made it have the same head that the head of the hoist has, so I could use the same tool to open up the thing. And then all I have to do is put an O-ring in there.
Yeah.
Because it needs an
that
O-ring.
Seems a little overly complex.
Because it does need an O-ring, by the way, because for basically you don't want the outside air exhaust and stuff to get into the cab.
Right.
So you need it sealed. So I wonder if I went through, because I have like a bin full of like misfit O-rings, and I bet you if I can find one that's like around like 2 inches in diameter and just design everything on that O-ring.
Yeah, I'm doing a Google search, I'm seeing a bunch of these marine stainless steel hatches, and they would actually look attractive.
Yes, they're also like, I think the cheapest is still like $40.
Oh, that's not cheap.
No. And I'm like, I'd rather spend 3 afternoons designing one and 3D printing it.
Well, now we know how much your time is worth.
Well, it's one of those. It's almost like the principle of it, though.
Yeah.
Even though I could probably knock out the design in like probably an hour. It wouldn't be too hard, and it would fit the same tooling. I would only have to make sure that it would not be too tight, and then like the tool would cam out, and you could never get it open.
Yeah, that'd be game over. Oh yeah, let me see if I can send. I just found something that's a boat stainless lift handle. Maybe something of that sort, because you just need a small hole access. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Nah, you know what? Never mind. I'm not going to send you this. It doesn't solve your problem. It would look cool though, but you would
that's
still
a
have
handle.
to. You would still have to
Route her
sink
down
it into the floor.
Yeah.
If you wanted it to be flush. I don't know. You might be SOL on this, unless you go with the whole design your own.
I mean, it's polycarbonate. It would last forever.
Yeah. You still have to punch a hole through the floor.
And no, that's fine. I've already done that.
Yeah.
Mostly to pass bolts through it. So I'm not too worried about that. And I've already punched holes in the side of the truck too. I installed some like turn signals and stuff. It's mostly like, how do you finish it that looks good?
And this is a function that you never actually want to use.
Never actually use. And so if it's on the side of the truck, it can protrude a little bit.
How much is a little bit?
Like a 1/4 inch or less.
Okay.
So I've looked at like maybe like they make fuel hatches things for like motorcycle tanks, but they're still like $30.
Yeah.
And it's like, I have to go buy something to make this project work.
That's kind of normal.
I know this is. I want to be able to do the spare tire holder and not buy anything. I don't want to go to the hardware store once.
Man, I'm looking at these fuel hatches and they look really cool, but I'm also seeing prices in the like $70-$80
Yeah, I know.
range. That would look so cool, man. Or you could design your own.
Yeah, because that's the thing is, it would only be probably about an hour or so of work to 3D print it.
Sounds like you know the route you're taking.
Yeah. I wonder if I should do it on the outside then. Should I do the side axis one? And just put this plug thing I'm designing on the side of the truck.
Would somebody come and mess with it?
I don't think you could, because it'd be a square drive. It'd be a 1/2 inch square drive is what it's going to be. I mean, no more than... this thing, if it was a hatch, someone's going to open up the hatch.
Right.
But, like, the turn signals, like, yeah, sure, someone can mess with the turn signals, but, like, no one's going to mess with turn signals. But someone's going to open up a hatch. I think I'm going to do the floor.
Yeah.
Though the side one, then I don't have to worry about sealing it. It just has to cover the hole.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to have an O-ring in it. Lots of design considerations. Well, I guess we'll talk about the rest of the RV stuff on the next podcast because we're already at an hour and 6 minutes.
Contemplating RV stuff.
Yes. Like, we didn't even get to the CNC stuff for you.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that. It works anyway because I'll have some more time to get further along with it.
Okay. Like, I didn't get to talk about the Texas DMV Occupations Code Section 2301.002, paragraph 21.
Oh, so fascinating.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week on the MacFab Engineering Podcast.
We were your host, Stephen Craig.
And Parker Dillman.
Take it easy.
Later, everyone. Thank you, yes, you, our listener, for downloading and enjoying our Crawfish podcast. If you have a cool idea, project, or topic, let Steven and I know. Tweet us at MacFab, at Longhorn Engineer, or at AnalogENG, or email us at podcast@macfab.com. Also, check out our Slack channel. You can find it at macfab.com/Slack. That's the always open invite link. Somehow we did it.
We did it every week.
Yeah, it's a hard design problem. Because it's like I've searched, like, I spent like 2 hours last night just looking around on Google.
It's only hard because of the stipulations you applied to
I know.
it, though.
That's how all my projects are, though.
Like, you could make it a lot easier on yourself.
Yeah, like the easiest would be buy a stainless hatch that screws down and then just have it protrude a little bit. That's the easiest solution.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want it to protrude. I want it to be flush floor. So it's like, okay, then I have to router it, plunge it, and it's like, well, I don't want to have to buy a tool just to do that.
But there's another option. Maybe you haven't thought of this. You could also make your box truck more homely and put rugs on. So if something is slightly raised, they just go under the rug.
Nah.
I think it would be kind of nice to have rugs in there.
I think I'm gonna do like rubber mats.
Okay.
Though actually, I thought about using just cheap carpet, so you can get it all nasty and gross and just throw it out every year.
Well, with rugs, you can always just wash them.
Can you wash a rug that big? I guess you could.
Mm-hmm. There's also places that will professionally wash them for you.
I was thinking like drive around the neighborhood and wait for someone to like get new carpet and you steal their old carpet. And hope a dog didn't poop and pee on it a lot.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, I know. That's usually how it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I came up with the episode title, The Crawfish Conundrum. And the picture would be like a crawfish, like, ah!
I'm going to buy a lobster tail, by the way, and we're going to boil an actual lobster tail. I've always wanted to do that.
I've never done that before.
Crawfish, boil a lobster tail. The Asian Mart said they guarantee that the bags don't have small crawfish in it. They say your pointed finger or bigger.
Okay. So that's going to be like a 3-minute boil and then like an 18-minute soak.
Yep. I'll do some more research tonight on getting the basket. I need to take care of it.
Yeah, that's going to be the most important thing.
I've found some So what might end up happening is I might cut more of the keg off. Instead of cutting the domed part of it, I might actually cut circular around it and then drill in like handles for it, you know. So just figure out a way to put handles in it.
What if you got a tall pot that would fit inside your kettle and you just drilled a ton of holes in that thing?
I could, yeah. I've found what's it called, strainers that will work. It's just the keg is usually way taller than the strainer.
Yeah.
So
that's what I was saying.
I
You can
think
find
has
like a
width of
tall
16 inches.
You can find like a tall pot
Yeah,
that would fit it.
I'll do some research.
See, you're doing the same thing. Putting a bunch of stipulations on the easy solution is just to order a crawfish pot on Amazon.
That actually might be the cheapest, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it was like $60.
I might just look right now. What is But the question is, how big do we need?
It's on. There's how many gallons it takes to. It's like a pound a gallon. Right. I don't remember anymore. There's a conversion between pound of crawfish to weight, and if you want to only cook a sack, and you want to say do 2 batches or 3 batches, then you just say you have 10 pounds, and then to cook 10 pounds at once, you need a certain amount of gallons. And a basket that's big enough to hold 10 pounds. All right. I got everything, so I'm going to sign off on the stream.
All right, man.